Singapore is a small country, but did you know that it ranks second globally and first in Asia in terms of GDP per capita? This country was very different 60 years ago. Instead, this was compelled to merge with Malaysia in order to ensure its survival. That is, a merger with Malaysia occurred, but what transpired? That Singapore left the Federation after 2 years and Singapore emerged as a sovereign country. Then how did a small country that was ravaged by the Great War, surrounded by poverty and thirst, manage to grow so much without access to natural resources that it first become one of the richest countries around the world? All we will get to know in this video.
Dear friends, Singapore's story begins in the 19th century. The British East India Company sought to grow their empire while in charge of the subcontinent. The Strait of Malacca was growing in importance for marine trade at the time, making it crucial for Britain to build a port there. It was starting to matter. At that time, the Dutch Empire ruled most of the region of East Asia, even though Penang and Bencoolen had British trade ports. However, from a strategic point of view, the British East India Company was seeking a port that was significant. The business started a campaign with this goal in mind. The first British person to reach Singapore during this campaign was Stamford Raffles, who discovered a small island most suited for a harbor south of the Malaysian peninsula.
The reason for this was because Singapore was situated immediately above the Straits of Malacca and was unpopulated. In addition to the fact that waters off the coast were deep and there was plentiful supply of wood for building ships, there was parity. Through a deal with the Sultan of Johor's older brother, Britain was granted permission to develop this site into a port. It was clear that the Dutch were strongly against this deal. The population of Singapore slowly began to increase following the entrance of Great Britain, and as a result, the Dutch worries grew. Then in 1824, the two new colonial powers divided the region by signing the Anglo-Dutch Treaty. According to this agreement, Britain granted the Dutch Empire Bencoolen Indonesian land. The Dutch Empire removed any objection it had to Singapore. At the same time, it gave to Malacca region to Britain.
Following that, trade activity in China increased following the Opium War. Then a significant influx of people looking for work from China and India began to arrive. Singapore had 200,000 residents at the end of the 19th century.
After seceding from the Malaysian Federation in 1965, Singapore found itself at the whim of the fate once more. Singapore lacked the necessary natural resources to support itself. Even the food and drink that arrived here were imports. What did Singapore do, though, to become known as the Asian Tiger? Known by its name, its per capita GDP ranked second globally while topping Asia. Dear friends, after Singapore's forcible independence, the country's Prime Minister implemented a number of policies that were very effective and helped to establish Singapore as a major economic powerhouse. His decisions to maintain exceptionally low taxes across the board was one of his first actions. Nearly all countries at the time in the 1960s had high tax rates, including, of course, the country where investors sought to place their money. The government must get a sizable portion of the income in the form of taxes, which discouraged them from making investments.
Because of the low tax rate at the time, Singapore was a wonderful choice for investors, and soon huge companies began to flourish there. Singapore was able to stand alone as a result. A very foresighted leader, Lee Kuan Yew, saw that Singaporeans needed to acquire the knowledge and technical abilities to operate in these firms, in addition to attracting foreign businesses to the city-state. Skills are also necessary so that business may prosper. People's financial situations can improve and the nation's economy can grow. Most people in Singapore were illiterate in the 1960s. In order to produce competent labor in the upcoming decades, the government of Singapore hired the greatest teachers from all over the world, in addition to allocating a significant portion of its budget to its citizens' education, which was significant in the growth of Singapore's economy. The education system in Singapore is currently one of the greatest in the world.
Dear friends, as Singapore lacked natural resources and only had a harbor that was strategically significant in the sea, the government made the most of it to generate good foreign exchange, and as a result, Singapore port is now one of the busiest ports in the world. In addition to this, Singaporean government has greatly advanced the repair sector. Some experts assert that Singapore's government's toughest anti-corruption efforts have also been crucial to the country's economic progress until 1990. Lee Kuan Yew served as Singapore's creator, premier, and head of the state. He held the view that the country can only attract international investment if it is free of corruption. Singapore has become a significant economic force in the modern world. Because of this, Transparency Worldwide Singapore ranked 4th in the world for least corruption in the 2021 study.
Singapore is a nation made up of one large island and 60 smaller ones. It only covers 728 square kilometers total. Being a small nation, there is a very little land available for agriculture. However, Singapore could adopt vertical farming on a huge scale to tackle this issue in order to meet the living and other demands of the expanding population. It is one of the Asian nations with the highest vertical farming rates. With this technique, crops are grown in pots top of one another, layer after layer. Additionally, Singapore also practices rooftop farming, which is fulfilling the need for food while also lowering the ambient temperature in Singapore. Singapore has a lot of skyscrapers, but Marina Bay Sands is the most well-known one.
This 56-story skyscraper, which has a roof shaped like a boat, houses all of the world's luxuries including retail malls, hotels, and casinos. If you ever travel to Singapore, be warned that chewing gum is absolutely prohibited there. If you must use a public restroom, remember to flush because failing to do so will result in a fine. You may potentially go to jail. In addition to all of this, creating noise and even using another person's Wi-Fi are illegal. Friends, it has taken Singapore just 60 years to make the transition from a developing nation to one that is wealthy.
Hope you enjoyed today's video.
That's it for today. Bye for now.